Thank you. Domain 5. I can hear the rain outside. It sounds lovely. I just really hope I don't lose electricity. Domain, if I do, I apologize profusely in advance and we can commence another date. Domain 5. And that consists of the competency 10. And this is your appropriate pedagogical principles and knowledge of instructional methods. And then I'm going to underline it here to describe the components of the lesson designed to achieve a specific learning objective. So your application of pedagogy within the lesson. So there's lots of things that I talk about with my students all the time with pedagogy. Direct instruction, pre-teaching of academic vocabulary prior to a lesson taking place. If you are introducing a new idea or it's an old idea that needs to be revisited and redefined, then you do it then for them, pre-teaching. That is an pedagogical principle. We know it is best practice, research-based. Our ELL students, our special ed students, even our native English speaking students will comprehend the lesson better, understand the lesson better, if we provide for them direct instruction of academic vocabulary or other language that they will be in contact with within the lesson that might impede on comprehension. That is a strategy. So we know working in cooperative learning groups is a strategy. Think, pair, share. There's particular things that we need to do for particular reasons to provide different avenues to success, to achieve mastery of that specific learning objective. Now, you get to choose the learning objective. I think they give you a TEKS, and the way that it works for, I'm gonna change my little thing here. The way that it works for trade is you have trade PPR exam. That's the only thing that is necessary for criminal justice, cosmetology, culinary arts, welding, HVAC, etc. All of the different trades and industry, hospitality. You guys all have to take the same exam. So they can't test you on anything specific to criminal justice. They can't test you on anything specific to cosmetology or specific to culinary arts or specific to welding or HVAC. They can't. They can't question you on this essay on any TEK that is specific to a particular trade or industry. What they can test you on are pedagogical principles, your knowledge of them, your application of instructional methods in order to enhance the effectiveness of your lessons, and the TEKS that they do ask you this question, because they don't do it for regular PPR, but I have a suspicion that they're going to add it pretty soon. It is just my prediction as a scholar and a teacher. I think they're going to add it pretty soon. I think they tested just with you guys, and most trade PPR students can handle it. So I think it's coming next for regular PPR. But there are questions within the, not questions, there are specific knowledge, concepts, and skills within the TEKS that are similar, if not exactly the same, for criminal justice, for cosmetology, for culinary arts, for welding, for HVAC. And they have to do with professionalism, with showing up on time. What happens, work ethic, your ability to communicate with colleagues, goal setting and follow through. So there are, and we'll take a look at them in just a little bit before we go into our brainstorming for the bullets. So they're going to ask you something that you can connect it to your particular trade. How does this particular standard affect my particular trade or industry? I think the one in this example has to do with work ethics. And in one of the TEAC breakdowns that I did in a session, we looked at the TEACs, and the TEACs were punctuality, the importance of punctuality. You know, how important is it for the police to be on time? How important is it for your chef to be on time? You know, if the restaurant says it's going to be open at 9 o'clock and you're there at 9:05 and doors are still, like, if it says open at 9 o'clock, I expect to at least be able to have coffee at like 9:02 or something like that, and the chef's already back there working, you know. And so what is punctuality, and what does it mean to the industry, and how does it affect other people within the industry? So note, examinees' written responses will be scored only on pedagogical content and knowledge. This is important, guys, because a lot of people get very nervous about the written response because they think that you have to write this like super like graduate level essay convincing them that you're the best you know, lesson planner on the planet. That's not what you have to do. You could literally give them bullets. They want for you only to give them what they ask for. Give them and they will, you're going to see exactly this on the exam, exactly this list from A to F. Identifying one learning objective, related one learning objective. Do not under any circumstances add more than one learning objective. If you do that, then that means you have to make sure you provide assessments for that learning objective, extra one that you did. Because if you didn't, it just looks like you're being a bad teacher in the lesson plan. Well, why did you do this? You didn't even measure it at the end. Don't add extra. Identify one learning objective, articulate it in a complete sentence. The students will learn the importance of punctuality in criminal justice, period. Whatever your objective, and it has to be measurable. And you whatever you say in your assessment, like as your assessment, because that's one of the bullets, you have to give a way of measuring whether or not they mastered that one learning objective. So choose that one learning objective, and this extra part isn't like a suggestion, it is a demand from the state. You must identify it, state students will learn the importance of punctuality in criminal justice. And then you absolutely must, this is not a request, but a demand, provide a logical rationale for selecting the particular learning objective. Connect the dots for TEA. Say TEACs, this point, this states about work ethics, and one of the most important staples of work ethics is showing up on time, ready to work. And boom, that's it. That's the logical rationale. Why did you create it? Because as we'll look later, and I can't move my page down until I erase my highlighting, and I don't want to do that just yet. But as we'll see on the next page, it shows us like it's overarching. The TEACs are overarching and broad. And so there are many things. You don't have to choose punctuality. You could choose professionalism with colleagues, professionalism with customers and or clients, whatever it is that you choose, but then you have to back it up. Why did I choose this particular TEAC, or not? Why did I choose this particular objective, and how does it show mastery of a portion of the TEAC? So that you're going to use appropriate, which means it, and depending on the age group, the grade level, and you should plan for if they tell you an age group, fantastic, but certainly plan for diversity in linguistics. That means in language proficiency. So you want to plan for a classroom that has a difference of language of skill. You might have intermediate students, native English speakers, advanced students, advanced high. You want to make sure that within your lesson, you have provided multiple support so that all students are able to achieve mastery. So appropriate pedagogical principles, effective instructional methods. There's different methods, and the two main methods we have are direct instruction or teacher-centered. Direct, I'm going to draw for y'all. Direct instruction equals teacher-centered. And imagine, if you will, that I could walk through the rows of my classroom and just, with a pitcher of knowledge, pour it into the student's brain. Like, direct instruction just assumes that we can transfer what we're saying directly into your brain just by speaking it or just by showing you. And that's not always the case. They need practice. They needed to debate. They need to question. They need to see illustrations, other examples. And so you have direct instruction, which is teacher-centered, and then you have student-centered, which is not direct instruction, which is more inquiry-based, which is more allowing the students to be more in charge and guiding of their learning. And we're going to pause here for a second, and I'm going to clear my drawings because I want to show you. And if you were here yesterday, you saw a smidge of it. No, not the library. Let's go to my history. Hopefully it's there. No. Oh, here it is. Classroom activities. This is what
how to kill all mosquitoes in the area in 90 seconds. This simple.
Before we begin this, does everybody have something to write with and write on?
Yes.
Excellent, because it's going to show you different strategies that we can use. I'll pause to discuss in between how I could utilize it, how you might utilize it. And then, but I want for you to be writing down just a summarization, you paraphrasing what each of the different classroom activities that we can do with students.
What brilliant trick you can do tonight.
This activity in the presentation is bring.
As I'm in the midst of applying for residency right now, wish me luck. Grammarly has again been a lifesaver.
I love Grammarly though. Grammarly's the best.
So part of successful teaching. Great activities are what separate the best teachers from the average teachers. Now, we'll begin with the question of why should educators use activities in their instructional practices? Classroom activities take place when students in the classroom apply, physically or mentally, what was previously taught by the teacher. One of the most obvious advantages of incorporating activities into the lesson is that activities get the students more engaged. Classroom activities are enjoyable to students. They need a break from the monotonous, boring lecture. Classroom activities are an active form of learning. Active learning.
The monotonous, boring lecture is us direct instruction, like it's teacher-centered, where and you can't get away from it. There are certainly purposeful areas within our lesson to do direct instruction, but we have to include engaging activities that include their interests, that activate their learning, that get them to practice their language, because that's a huge deal. They're not just there to learn the academics, they're there to become better listeners and speakers.
It helps create lifelong learners in students. Learning is more than just content. It's about process. There is no room for collaboration with lectures and direct instruction. Activities provide opportunities to have students work in groups, develop soft skills, critically think, communicate, and
those soft skills are so important. Those are social emotional skills, self-awareness, like other social awareness, the ability to work within a group and come to agreement after disagreement, to achieve your goal after difficulty or failure, resilience, all of those soft skills are so important, and they're learned via collaboration, and the lessons present themselves sort of organically for them within these other actions. So it's almost criminal to not incorporate collaboration within your class. So certainly incorporate it in whatever lesson you're having the student for your exam, like for the trade exam. Certainly write down or think of one of the collaborative assignments so that you can say, and I'm having them practice content specific, concepts and vocabulary for my ELO, special ed, and native English speakers with low proficiency. Like, give it to them straight, like they make them choke on all your knowledge.
And make decisions. As an added bonus, classroom activities provide students with a sense of autonomy. Autonomy is a crucial part of
Autonomy is them taking ownership. And the way that we can build autonomy is by giving them ownership and allowing them to choose and have a voice and decision making. That autonomy helps them drive their follow through, but it begins with giving them the reins and practice to make the reins. So that being said, an excellent way to sort of wow the test graders would be to provide more than one way to assess that they get to choose from at the end. Like, as you're assessing, they can orally, discuss, have an oral discussion with me about the content, or do an exit ticket, or they can together as a group come up with a collaborative way of assessing them. So whatever way you're doing it, but allowing them to have choice and agency creates autonomy, their regulation of themselves, their auto self.
Problem solving. Student autonomy is a driving factor for students to get work done. Now, let's take a look at some of the steps and how-to of planning activities. Planning and preparation are absolutely vital to the success of any classroom activity. Planning comes first, preparation comes after. First off, all activities should have a clear objective. Objectives should be SMART, meaning specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely.
Specific objectives. Specific, like students will be able to do this very specific thing, like discuss or define or analyze the importance of punctuality in criminal justice. Specifically, measurable. There needs to be a way to measure. We don't make objectives willy-nilly. We do them. An objective is our goal that we're shooting for. And if we can't measure it, and measure is another word for assessment, then we don't do it. We teach what we can assess, and we assess to better teach what we're teaching. So achievable, that you're not doing it out of the realm of possibility, the objective. If I'm doing an intro to culinary arts class, I'm not going to, at the end of the first 6 weeks, say for their final exam for the 6 weeks, they have to bring in a flambe. I don't even know what that is, but that just sounded like a fancy word with culinary arts. But it has there you have to go commiserate with their skill, commiserate with the grade level and the age group developmentally. Is it achievable for them? Because if not, you're setting them up for failure. If you know already they don't have the prerequisite skills and knowledge to achieve this objective, then some other objectives need to take place before we get to this objective. That it is, what was R again, guys? Realistic and timely. It's not going to take forever for you to do it. I need this objective to take place and mastery to take place in this lesson, like within this class period. If not by tomorrow at the most, but it's not going to last this one objective that I'm measuring for like 3 weeks. It has to be timely. And we should have several, to be honest with you. And if you're going to be, you want to be an all-star, and I'm going to write it for you here. If you want to be an all-star for they didn't ask for it and you don't have to give it to them. But if you want to be fancy, a good teacher does the academic learning objective. Everybody puts that on the board. A good teacher will also include the language learning objectives. And just like the academic objective, the language learning objective needs to be specific, measurable, and by specific, it's like this: listening skills. Listening, this is how our learning objective for listening. This is our learning objective for speaking. This is our learning objective for reading. This is our learning objective for writing. And so I could say our learning objective for listening is students will listen to group members or jigsaw puzzle members discuss punctuality. Speaking, students will take information from jigsaw to new group and discuss. Reading, and so on and so forth, but being very specific. So great teachers will always remember to do both, because it is always our job to do both. Every single one of you will have language learners in your classroom, and even some of your native English speakers, they have a delay in their development simply because of COVID. And they even had one before COVID. Like, honestly, I have researched it and have debated it in classes, and our oral language proficiency in America is low. And then in Texas specifically, it's one of the lower states. So everybody can benefit from listening, speaking, reading, and writing, always about those content specific knowledge, concepts, and skills. So let me erase this and then we'll continue on. It's really coming down here now, like a lot. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it sounds beautiful.
Teachers have to plan their activities. This is why we lesson plan as teachers. Lesson plans set us up for success by avoiding obstacles and pitfalls. In lesson plans, teachers have the opportunity to differentiate learning by content, process, or product. Activities are often differentiated by different groups. I think most teachers won't argue the importance of activities, but they'll avoid doing classroom activities because of the additional work required to gather the supplies and assemble the materials. Teachers must assess.
Remember, for the purposes of the PPR exam, it is like it is Utopia ISD. Theoretically, you have these things in place. Pretend you have all these things. Like, there's no limitations to what you could do or what resources your school has. Make it up resource wise, because theoretically you should have everything that you need to do effective instruction.
Students upon completion of the activity. They should also take the time to review with the whole class what was learned. A whole class summary is usually.
Have some questions, or a question, at least one question at the end that you're going to ask your class at the end of the lesson for them to think about first, then have them write the answer to it, write it down on a piece of paper so you've covered the writing portion of it, then have them turn to a partner, think, pair, share, negotiate, low risk, practicing language, talking about content specific stuff together, and then come back to a whole group discussion and assess or review, come to a summation. It won't always take place in the classroom. In real life, you'll run out of time at the end of class. I love coming to this beautiful ending at the end of class. It doesn't always happen. It just doesn't. But for the purposes of this exam, it absolutely must. There is a lesson cycle that must be religiously followed, and there's different parts to it. And the last part of it is allowing the students to self-reflect on what they've learned, giving them at least a poignant question relating to the content for them to think about, write about, speak about, listen to someone else talk about, and then discuss together as a whole.
Warranted. Next, we'll take a look at the first of our 15 classroom activities. And first up, we have the gallery walk. One of my favorite activities.
It's also one of my favorite activities too. I just have to say that.
The gallery walk allows students to move around the classroom and thoughtfully respond to meaningful questions and situations. Teachers begin by placing students in small groups. Questions or prompts are placed around the room on chart paper as stations. Each group is assigned to a station to begin. At the first station, the group collectively discusses the prompt, and one of the students writes the response on the chart paper using a marker. Groups are usually given about 3 to 5 minutes to respond, at which point they rotate to the next station. At the next station, students read what was written to the question or prompt at the new station, and then they add their own thoughts on the chart paper.
So you can do this in many ways, and I've done it in many ways in my classroom. You can set up the question and or visuals and or text at different stations, just like you would at an art show. There's different exhibits. So there's different exhibits that you set up, or the students in different groups set them up. Like I've given an assignment where I give them a group work, I give them the butcher paper or the large sticky note for the wall, and they either read the text, analyze it, come up with their thing or their drawing or whatever the assignment was. And that's the station that other groups go to, or I set it up. You can do it either way. So, I mean, you could have it just going along with the punctuality thing. You could have like different scenarios of what's going on in different areas, walks of life. You could even use, like, let's say I am the criminal justice teacher and we're discussing punctuality. So I could have different scenarios, you know, little stick drawings with bubble talk about different scenarios where the people were tardy or not on time on class to teach, the police officer, the chef, or the whole restaurant themselves to open up, the doctor's office, and have poignant questions and have them move around. And like, so even though I'm teaching criminal justice, I could have brought in all these other stations, all these other trades and industries to show them how important punctuality just is in the grand scheme of things, all the way across the board. So you can use gallery walk in several different ways to teach overarching ideas. You can either give them a small text, like in different groups, give everyone a different section and have them, like, for instance, you could say, this is more broad, but you could have a learning objective. Students will just be able to define the importance or like the characteristics of work ethics, a good work ethics, right? And so you give them different areas: punctuality, professionalism, respect in the workplace, different stuff that you give them, and articles to read, and they have to come up with a poster and they go around and they have to, you know, take notes and write comments and whatnot. You are having them delve deep, become experts in one scenario, and then move around and gain knowledge from their peers. So that is meaningful. And then going back and doing a think, pair, share, having them practice discussing what they learned.
Groups continue to rotate from station to station, responding to chart paper prompts. Teachers monitor to ensure uninterrupted student learning is happening. Continuing, groups return to their original stations and read what was added to their original responses. Lastly, students present to the entire class all the ideas that were placed on the chart paper, both their ideas and the ideas of other students. Now let's take a quick break, and I'm going to ask you to please like and share this video. subscribe to this channel as well. Also, check the description for a PowerPoint of this entire presentation. Heading back to the activities, next up is classroom demonstrations.
Demonstrations is just modeling. Of course, you might include demonstrations
There is
um,
absolutely nothing
your
going on
class,
with me romantic
but that's
relations.
more like direct instruction a little bit. You could have other students do
Classroom
demonstrations. That's
are used to
a
increase
nice
understanding
twist.
of a concept and to enhance interest in the subject matter. One way to have an engaging demonstration is to bring in exciting props and models. A physics teacher may bring in something like a potato gun or various types of projectile launchers. If a science teacher is performing a demonstration, say a flame test or the carbon snake experiment, they should ask students to predict what will happen next. Predicting encourages students to think ahead, to reason, and to ask questions. It's best to perform demonstrations that are stimulating to the students. There should be some sort of an action. An acid-based solution changing colors is an example, or something as easy as flying a paper airplane across the room. All demonstrations can be followed up with a discussion. Ask probing and thought-provoking questions that require the students to analyze and make sense of what just took place. At the elementary level, students are requested to bring in their own props. Show and tell, for example. Students may present lines and subjects.
Debates are
Have a debate
important
about musical
too.
composers, the theory of evolution, or any other topic.
They learn through friendly competition, interpersonal skills, teamwork, and respect, mutual respect, all considered soft skills, but very, very important.
It begins when a teacher introduces a topic. Maybe
So
a
we know
question
what
of whether
debates are. Let's
Christopher
go to
Columbus
something
was a
else
hero or
that's
not.
like,
That topic should align with one of the curriculum standards. Students are broken into two groups,
games are
Columbus
fun,
and against Columbus.
PowerPoints.
Next,
yeah.
each side
I
is
want it
given
to go to
time
Jigsaw. We're gonna
study. Next, the teacher creates groups of students of about 3 to 5 students. Moving forward, the next activity up for discussion is the popular jigsaw activity. The jigsaw method asks students to become, quote, experts on a topic, meet with other experts of the same topic, and report to original groups. The jigsaw begins with the teacher introducing a topic of study. Next, the teacher creates groups of students of about 3 to 5 students. Any random students will work. The original group is called the home group. The teacher assigns the same reading selection for each home group. The text material is chunked into the same number of sections as the number of students in each group. 4 chunks for 4 students. Each student studies their piece of text. Students are designated as experts on the chunk of material they are required to study.
They're not just studying it, they're taking notes, they're annotating it, defining things, asking questions, becoming experts, delving into their particular chunk. All of it is one article or one text, and it's been chunked into four things to give each group member, and each group member is going to take a particular chunk and become an expert, and then they're going to that group jigsaw and puzzle piece with other group members.
Next, experts from different groups leave their home group and meet up to discuss that same chunk of material that they've been studying. Teachers provide key questions for the experts to discuss. Then the experts return to their home group. Now each expert is given the task of teaching others in the group what they have learned in the.
So I don't know that he didn't do a good job of matching the colors with it. Like he should have matched the colors with this thing, but like the person that got the green text chunk is going to meet with other people that only got the green text chunk, and they're going to have a discussion, and they've only seen the green text chunk together as a group, and they're going to become even super experts because they're now they're not reading it, they're discussing and or reading, whatever, they could reread it, but they're discussing and they have questions to delve deeper into that chunk with other green group members. And then they return back to their group.
The text. Some teachers take it a step further and have every student explain in their own words to the entire class. That's up to you. The next activity is one that does not take place in the classroom, but instead outside of the classroom, which is the field trip. Classroom field trips remain one of the best methods
They
for
do
teachers to provide students with real-world experience. First off, one of the best things about field trips is that it provides a change of scenery. Seeing the same room day in, day out gets tiring for children.
Always use
Journaling is a fast, quick method for the students to reflect on their learning and also for you to assess, like an easy killing two birds with one stone.
Journaling
So
allows students to take charge of
so they're reflecting on their learning, and then you have something tangible later to look in and assess on, sort of like as an interloper on their learning.
their learning while providing students an avenue to express their feelings. I find journaling works best when there aren't many rules attached to the activity. Just let students write down their thoughts. Journaling can take place on a nature walk, doing current events that come up in social studies class, or reflecting on a math quiz. Writing prompts can take place in all classes, even math classes. Have students write down the steps that they took in their journal to solve a particularly difficult math problem. Journals can be used.
Right, like that's brilliant. At the end of class, like let's say you taught a new skill, maybe it was something having to do with division or balancing an equation, and you ask the students to, in their journal, reflect on the steps that they took, that they used, reflect. And that is you utilizing metacognition, forcing the students to think about their thinking. What did I understand about this? And what can I regurgitate back? What can I dictate back? And so it's a way of self-evaluation. They can think about their thinking. Metacognition is them thinking about their thinking, measuring their thinking, but it also is, like I said, a very nice sneaky way of you to be able to look to see, are they learning what they should be learning, or are some steps missing? What needs to take place?
Used for students to evaluate their own performance. Have students weekly write in their journals their strengths and weaknesses in the course. Journaling is used as a form of reflection. Teachers may ask students to reflect on their thoughts after hearing a lecture about an intense political situation taking place today. Journaling is commonly found in an English or writing class. Have students write in their journals for the first 5 minutes of class every day. Let them express their inner thoughts and feelings. It's a way for teachers to really get to know their students. Now we're coming up to the final 3 activities of the top 15. The next activity up is learning centers. Learning centers are stations around the room where groups of students gather to work on specific skills or assignments. Stations are set up around the room.
This is a good activity, but it's more EC through 6 centered or focused.
With different tasks, assignments, activities.
But you could still do that. Let's say that you are in a culinary arts class and you could have different learning centers. So like the whole class is not about chopping, but like one station is about chopping, the other one's about peeling, the other one's about filleting, or whatever other culinary skills you need, but different centers requiring different tasks and practice of different skills within the same lesson.
Groups rotate from station to station. Teachers give a set time for groups to.
Oh, this is one of my favorites.
Skills. Here we'll take a look at the KWL chart. Teachers can use this activity by writing on the whiteboard. It begins by writing the words, what I know, what I want to know, and what I learned. Then the class fills in those sections on a given topic. Say what you already know about George Washington, what you want to know about him, and lastly, what you learned at the end of the lesson. As an added element, students can hypothesize what they think they'll have learned. Then go ahead on the board and review and make corrections. With the KWL chart, educators like that there is a clear objective and it's integrated into the lesson. The KWL is very direct and targeted. When the class is done with the chart, the teacher and the student should take the time to reflect on what was learned. And this assignment actually works very well with a Google Doc, a shared Google Doc, where students write in their responses.
My God, you can even write that, a shared Google Doc, KWL chart. KWL is great to find out, like to pre-assess what the students understand before you begin. Like, what do you know? What do you wonder? He said, what do you want to know? But I learned it. What do you wonder? What do you know? What do you wonder? What did you learn? So the K and the W always take place before the lesson or the activity or the learning takes place. And then afterwards, you go back, and it again forces that metacognition. They're forced to think about, what did I think about this topic before, and what do I know about it now?
Entry exit ticket. Entry and exit tickets are quick prompts that are used as diagnostics and allow the students to begin the lesson, enter, or to leave the classroom to exit. An entry ticket establishes learning momentum for the class. It gets them working, gets them writing, making them more likely to continue in that direction. Exit tickets, which come at the end of the class, are a good way to collect feedback on what students have actually learned. Students write responses to questions on little slips of paper. Students are often asked to summarize. The prompt questions should focus on the key topic of the lesson. Let the exit ticket require students.
Yeah, the exit ticket should focus on, helping you collect data on students' mastery of the objective that we have for the student. So we just looked at a few instructional methods, activities that we could utilize to help the students achieve the learning objective. Instructional strategies for connecting students' prior knowledge, life experiences, and interests to the learning objective. You want to find a way to connect it to them. Like we were talking about the punctuality. So having, the scenario of a hospital, or having that discussion, connecting it to something that they know, something that they have done before. How many of you have been to the hospital before? Well, what if the ER doctor didn't come in on time and he had a whole ER room filled waiting? So connecting it to where they would know. But each one of these bullets, you have to provide specific sort of justification or addressing of it. So if they ask for safety issues or safety concerns during instruction, then you have to identify it, or if there's none, point out that there's absolutely none, because you've taken care of physical and emotional safety of your students. This one is so important, and people lose so many points for it. The E, describing how your instruction is accessible to all students. Accessible means everyone can reach it. Why doesn't it do that? Accessible means everyone can reach it. And so even those with special needs. So it's talking about English language learners, special needs students, socioeconomic disadvantage, regardless of their skill levels, regardless of their language proficiency. So in this E, you have to make sure that you point out that you pre-taught academic specific vocabulary and provided illustrations and or videos to help the students conceptualize that new language for the lesson. That you are providing if you're doing something that requires multiple steps, like let's say there's 5 steps in it, that you've broken it down on a paper that you have posted on the overhead, and that you've given to the students so that they know the particular steps. Special needs students need things in smaller chunks. So breaking down, especially if they're doing multiple tasks within an activity, you need to break down the task explicitly and make sure that you mention to them, for the purposes of E, every single thing you're doing and why you're doing it. And last but certainly not least, F is your assessment. What way are you going to assess them? And I'll tell you, you shouldn't just have one way. This is what, I said, just give them what they want. And they said one learning objective. Notice how they said appropriate assessment methods with an S for evaluating. Because in any lesson, there's no way I'm just giving one assessment, or I have one assessment. I am collecting data the whole time. In the beginning, while I was doing my KWL chart, and in the no section, I was gauging who understood what then. making sure that I provided sufficient help and support. As I walked around to the small groups, working in their jigsaw, I was listening to students, providing feedback when necessary, doing active, responsive teaching. And then before they left, I also gave them an exit ticket. Like, you were measuring them for that one learning objective, collecting data in so many ways, and be specific with those. And that's all. That's it. Kind of a lot. You're going to be graded on the completion, the degree to which you complete the assignment, responding, listen to how they say it, each specific task in the assignment, the degree to which you apply relevant knowledge and skills effectively, the degree to which you support the response with evidence, examples, explanations, that connecting of the dots that you're doing, that's the support. You being able to apply how it's relevant, that teak to your particular trade, is application of content. So we're going to end here today. If you guys would like to sign up for next week, I'd be happy to continue with you guys and go over some multiple choice questions next time. But do remember that you have access always and at the comfort of your home, the trade PPR playlist, where I go through, I'm not going to go through this right now, the constructed response, in depth, and then, going through some question analysis as well. Does anybody have any questions?
No, thank you.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for all the information.
Yes, ma'am. And so you let me know if you want to meet up next week. We can certainly do that. We can even come up with a brainstorm. We can practice right through one of those examples using your particular trade.
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay, so I'll see you next week, and you guys have a beautiful rest of your weekend. And Priscilla, I will see you on Saturday.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your help.
Yes, ma'am. It's my pleasure.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.